Welcome back, Line Golf Academies, to another episode. In today's episode, we're going to look at two LPGA Tour players. The first being Patty Tavatanakit, and I know I'm butchering the name. What episode would there be without me butchering a name? So if you do know if I'm doing this correctly, let me know. We can see she hits 61.7% driving accuracy, but for her, it doesn't matter. She's 15th in putting, so she makes up for by putts. And we're going to compare it to Allisen Corpuz, who, look at that percentage, 86.24, leads the LPGA in accuracy, but we can see she struggles a little bit with putting at 128. We're going to look at a down the line driver view and look at why one hits so many more fairways than the other, but it doesn't really matter as long as you can putt, as we can clearly see on those statistics. And maybe you can look at some of this and how you can implement it in your swing to help you hit more fairways. And if you watched my video a couple days ago, you hit more fairways, 50% more likely to hit green, and then scoring becomes just a little bit easier. If you do like that, hit that like, share, and subscribe. Really helps the channel grow. And I also do online golf lessons. If you're interested, reach out to me in the contact down below. But other than that, let's go take a look at how these two ladies' swings differ and which one looks more like you. Okay, so we have Patty on the left and Allisen on the right. Now remember, Allisen hits 86% of the fairways. Patty on the left side only hits 60%, but is higher in the rankings and makes more money this year just because putting is such a difference as well. So I'm trying to figure out how can I explain this without getting way too complicated, as sometimes I tend to on this channel, not intentionally, but I can get carried away. But I'm going to talk about your plane and how you recognize where your plane is and the relationship between your hand plane and also your club face plane, because they are two separate things, but they need to work together. And how do they complement each other and how do they work together? So let's take a look at the left side. Let's look at the setup. And obviously the one on the right side is filmed at a higher level, I would say head height, and the one on the left side is more weight height. But let's just watch these swings a couple of times and see if you can notice something between the hand paths, the club head paths, and we're going to give a moment of silence so you can think about this. Okay, moment of silence is up. So if you haven't noticed, we can see some definite difference of hand paths and also club face paths. But let's break this down even further. Let's start from the setup and let's look at some similarities. So the similarities, they're both hitting driver. The one on the left side typically hits more up on the golf ball. The one on the right side looks like it hits slightly more down on the golf ball. I haven't seen any of their flight scope numbers, so I can't quite guarantee that, but it just looks like it, so it's probably somewhat true. Let's do a quick check on their centeredness. So from the arches of the heel straight up and the arches of the heel straight up, we can see that they're both intersecting the lower plane line and spine angle line. So obviously a lot of the tour players do this. If you check yourself at home and notice that your arches of the heel don't go up where your lower plane and spine angle meets, start looking at your posture and make sure that they do, because remember, the golf swing all evolves around the center of wherever those two lines form, and so you have to support that center. If you're leaning towards your toes or your heels, it's going to throw yourself off. You're going to be too busy trying to maintain your balance, and that's going to mess with your plane work. Now keep in mind when we go through the swing that both have very ingrained motions and they're at the top of their game, top percentage of the world. So we're not here to say one is better than the other, but we're just looking at to see why that percentage is such a difference. So I drew the lower plane lines. Let's take away those red lines for a second here. I drew the lower plane line in Barney purple, the upper shorter Barney purple line. That is all that's trying to do is show you an idea of where is the green zone. So as long as your club is in that green zone somewhere, you're going to hit it decently. Now it's not going to be perfect sometimes if you come too steep or too shallow, but that is going to be our green zone. So let's just go ahead and put some green area like a little end zone, and let's look at, and they take that club back, we can see the one on the right side which hits more fairways. How much closer is she to the lower plane line than the one on the left side? They both get their arms to that secondary plane line very nicely, both a little bit higher, which I don't mind seeing. Most great golfers get their hands a little bit higher. There are some that get lower, but most of them get them higher. But what we can see, if we go all the way back to each person's back swing, we're going to look at how far their club head actually gets, and let's put it in red since red's a little bit easier. So we're going to draw a line here, and then the one on the right side, let's see where that transition happens right there. So we can see that if we just go back to address, which one of those lines is pointing closer to the plane lines, we can see the one on the right side is definitely doing so. In other words, there is less work to get that club head, which is the top here. We're going to draw a little club head here in my perfect Adobe Photoshop paint right now. And obviously those club faces are not in the right position, but you get my point. How much more work will it take to time this club to go all the way back around and drop in the slot, versus this one, it just basically has to pull down. So she has that going for her already. Now, keep in mind, the one on the left, that club is going further back, and that's how she hits it, probably 25 yards further than the one on the right. So there are some benefits and negatives to each one of these swings, and I'm sure if somebody was meet in the middle, you might get somebody that hits it 260 and hits 70% of the fairways. So there's room for growth for distance on the right side, and there's room for growth for accuracy on the left side. But once you start changing with that, you have to change the whole golf swing. So at their level, it's not really worth it. So let's take away those Adobe beautiful Photoshop paintings and let's look at the club head and how it works back down into that little end zone. So we can see already midway points in her swing. Let's draw where her club shaft is, and it is favoring that top plane line. Left side of the screen, we can see that this is now starting to, in that same position, this is now a little bit lower than the top plane line, and this is why I believe that she hits more up on the golf ball versus the one that hits more down on the golf ball. But as we go forward, we're going to start to see, and I know it shudders a little bit, but there's the club head, and one more frame for the right side, and there's the club head, that lower plane line. The one on the left side, we can see the club head's trying to find that lower plane, but take a look at what happens on the left side of the screen. We go one frame and we can see that club head has moved a significant amount of real estate. Now we have to think about, why did it do that? It's not as slow as the one on the right side, and it is not a camera issue because these are recorded at the same speeds and we slowed them down at the exact same. So it's not a camera issue. It is a conservation of angular momentum issue. So let's delete the red lines and let's just show you how much it takes. So let's back up on the right side of the screen. We're going to draw the top of the club head, which is here. I can just see that. And one frame, two frames, we can see that it's just short of striking the golf ball. On the left side of the screen, we see it's in a similar position back here, and it takes one frame to get just shy of the golf ball. And now why is that? Well, remember all that spacing that she had to make up for at the top of the swing? She's carried, she hasn't thrown from the top, but she's carried that angle down, and right here, she better get those hands involved to make up for that excess wrist manipulation on the backswing, and boom, boom, there it is, that one frame to release it. We can look at the right side of the screen though. We're going to see some differences at impact and the amount of shoulder rotation shy of impact. So we're going to go back to about one frame before impact, right about there where they're both in the same position. Now let's clean up all these green lines because we don't want to confuse anything any more than they are right now. But look at the shoulder turn. The one on the left side, it is slightly closed, maybe square to the target. The one on the right side, she is wide open. Now, why is this beneficial? Because it actually gets the hands lower quicker. And it also gets the hands pulling towards your body because as you turn open, your hands are moving left already of the target, which makes this space much closer than this space. And we can see that next frame as they both strike the golf ball. Look at the hands on the right side. They are already moving left and much closer to the body versus the one on the right is still away from the body. So as a result, let's take a look at where they are just past impact. We can see the club just peeked out on the right side. Look how close it is to that lower plane line, where the one on the left that peeks out are much higher to this secondary plane line, which again means that she's swinging more up on the golf ball. So we know that's the first view we see of the exit path for our club shaft. The next frame, we're going to start to see some hands. So already we can see that club is on that secondary plane line versus the one on the left, the club. You can see the club head veering out there. You can see how much closer it is to its original shaft line. And we see on the left side of the screen, the hands are appearing higher and they escape up. Where the right side, we see where the hands and the club shaft are still much closer together, and they continue on that journey. Even the next frame up, we can see how the escape pattern matches her spine angle, and specifically here, those hands are just now getting above the plane, where the one on the right side, the hands are very much escaped and the club is on the other side already. So I went ahead and kept on drawing the shaft all the way through and the follow through, and what we can do is let's just go back down to address and see which one of these lines is right next to each other. We can see how much more parallel the ones on the right are. So the biggest thing that I see that are the differences is obviously the length of the backswing in terms of the wrist position. The one on the right side set at a much easier transition point where she can drop in the slot. The one on the left side has to make up a lot of work, which she does right here, but that changes the escape pattern of her shaft. Now, when you are at that elite level, 1 or 2 degrees, when the club face is open or closed 1 to 2 degrees, as well as a path issue, that can give you some misses. Now, obviously, that one on the left side generates much more club head speed and can hit the ball further because it's swinging more up, where the one on the right side of the screen is more of a body-dominated downswing where the body's opening up, slowing down the hands. They don't have to make up a lot of room, and that controls the club head, and it keeps it on a flatter plane on the way through, which is key. So hope that makes sense to you. Do you see yourself in any one of these swings? If you do, throw on a skirt, go play LPGA Tour, because you are probably going to be just as good as them. But try and identify what's going on in your plane, in your end zone, your green area. So keep a lookout for that. Let me know your thoughts and comments below. Thanks for the support. I'll see you next time. Fairways and Greens.